Sinister tiny holes discovered on man's back, what doctors reveal will haunt you forever. Mark's heart raced as he stared into the bathroom mirror, a horror unfolding on his back. Tiny, round holes glimmered in horrifying patterns, like the pockmarks on a moon's surface. Each hole sent a sickening shiver coursing through him. What had he done to deserve this? Was it the factory's toxic air? The long nights? He wished it were something trivial, like a rash or an insect bite, but deep down, dread gnawed at him, whispering that it was worse. The night before had been brutal. He could still feel the chill creeping down his spine, that prickling sensation so eerie it felt like fingers tracing fastidiously against his skin. Discomfort turned to fear and then an eerie curiosity. What if something evil lingered there, under the surface, waiting for him to slip? As he ran his fingers along the edges of the holes, they pulsed lightly as if sharing a grotesque secret. Panic rippled inside him, accentuating every heartbeat. Days passed and the holes multiplied, deepening like secrets in a tight-knit community. Mark shared his plight with Sarah, desperate for reassurance, but her fatigue was palpable. She juggled the chaos of their 2 young kids and the mounting bills with fierce determination, but his unraveling frightened her. Maybe it's just stress, she offered weakly, wringing her hands in worry. Yet Mark could see it in her eyes. Dread mirrored his own. Their life in Maplewood, once a haven, started feeling insidious. Outside, familiar faces turned strange. Gatherings of neighbors that used to involve warm laughter now whispered rumors, glancing at him with furtive eyes. Job offers came with sinister undertones, and every seemingly innocent conversation dripped with underlying tension. Mark's pulse quickened at the sight of neighbors across the street, shuffling in hushed tones. What were they hiding? He plummeted into nightmares that twisted the fabric of reality. Visions of dark shadows entwining around his family, pulling them under, injected paranoia straight into his veins. He learned of the disgraced doctor long gone who used to operate in Maplewood. Whispers of twisted experiments echoed in his mind, the man suffocating in secrecy behind hospital walls. Would he find answers there, or only more horrors? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Mark's condition worsened, and he felt his grip on reality slip. The holes throbbed under his skin, harbingers of despair that echoed in the whispers of his neighbors. Paranoia turned toxic, blurring the lines between friends and foes. The sense of safety he once held was gone, a mere figment in a community that turned its back just as shadows consumed his heart. One rainy evening, as thunder crashed outside, a sickening realization washed over him. The creature of Maplewood, the harbinger of complacency, had marked him. The darkness was real. Shadows shifted in the corners of his vision, hints at the monstrous being watching him. Was it too late? Was he and his family already carved into the web of this horror? Just as he began to contemplate his desperate last stand, an envelope slipped under their front door. Heart pounding, Mark snatched it up, his hands trembling. What was this now? Inside was a single, short message written in an erratic scrawl: "You are not alone, they are watching." In that moment, Mark realized, the nightmare was only just beginning. Mark's eyes darted to the window, the gloom outside growing heavier, as if something watchful lurked in the shadows. The rain pounded against the glass, each drop a reminder of the chaos closing in. He felt a burning need to protect his family, but the fear tethered him to his spot, a mute witness to the encroaching dread. What does it mean? He whispered, clutching the envelope as if it held the key to his salvation. The room felt stifling, the once familiar home turning alien and hostile. He could hear the distant sounds of laughter from neighboring houses, but it sounded so distant now, a world where he could never belong again. Mark's heart raced. Panic surged through him as he recalled the tales of the disgraced doctor. Was it possible that he wasn't just a mere ghost of Maplewood but a puppeteer pulling strings? The way Sarah's expressions shifted from concern to something akin to fear only deepened his desperation. Whatever was happening didn't just affect him. Mark? Sarah's voice broke through his thoughts, a soft knock on the bathroom door barely audible over the rainstorm. The kids are asleep, we need to talk. He could see her wary eyes around the corner, the fabric of her hope fraying dangerously. I'll be right out, he said, forcing his voice to sound steady. As he stepped through the doorway, their eyes locked for a moment, and Mark felt a mix of determination and despair. How could he protect her from whatever fate loomed? I got a letter, he said shakily, holding it out. Sarah took it, her fingers trembling as she read the erratic scrawl. What does this mean? She asked, her voice tightening, reflecting the squeeze of anxiety in his chest. I don't know, he admitted, running a hand through his hair. But I can't help but feel it's connected to the holes to him. The last word hung in the air like an anvil, something they could both feel but dared not name. In the depths of their silence, shadows seemed to stretch and creep in, invading the living room. Mark shifted uncomfortably, uneasiness prickling at his skin as the thunder rumbled once more. He glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to find eyes watching him from the darkness. We need to leave Maplewood, he urged. Tonight. Leave? Mark, you're not making any sense. She protested, her tone rising slightly. What about the kids? We can't just pack up and they will come for us, he interrupted, voice low, charged with fear. The holes on his back began to pulse again, a rhythmic echo of dread urging him to hurry. This place, it's already taken root inside me. We can't fight it here. After a tense moment, Sarah's features softened, the fear in her eyes mixing with a glimmer of understanding. What if she hesitated, weighing options against terror, what if we go see someone? Maybe the doctor's family, there could be answers there. Mark opened his mouth to protest but glanced back, a gut instinct urging caution. What if it leads to more questions? More darkness? He shuddered at the thought, but curiosity coiled tightly in his stomach. The immediate urgency of escape began to war with the allure of knowledge. Suddenly, a loud bang reverberated through the house, startling both of them. A familiar, nightmarish creak sounded from the basement, the place they had sealed with a sense of finality just days ago. What was that? Sarah breathed, eyes wide with shock. Fear etched lines of dread on her face. Before Mark could respond, the power flickered, casting them into darkness for a heartbeat. He thought he heard breathing, a low, raspy sound whispering through the cracks in the walls. Get the kids! He shouted fiercely, adrenaline surging as he raced toward the basement door. The moment he reached it, the door swung open, as if beckoning him into the unknown, daring him to confront whatever lurked within. And in that suffocating darkness, he realized that whether they escaped or not, the true nightmare was only just beginning. As he stepped inside, the last remnants of light flickered out behind him, drowning them all in the black. The darkness swallowed Mark whole. His heart hammered in his chest as he shuffled cautiously into the basement. The air was thick and damp, laden with the earthy scent of soil and something metallic, a scent he didn't want to name. Each step seemed to echo in the void, a taunting reminder of vulnerability. He fumbled along the wall, searching for a light switch, but his fingers brushed against rough wood and cold, damp stone. The basement felt alive, breathing around him, resonating with a life he didn't understand. He turned back, half anticipating Sarah's frantic figure behind him, but the door slammed shut, plunging him deeper into isolation. Mark? Sarah's voice trembled from behind the sealed door. He could sense her fear, it mingled with his own, a palpable force that heightened their plight. Please come back. Stay by the kids. He shouted, forcing his voice steady, willing her to trust him. His eyes strained against the black, seeking anything, clues, remnants of what lay below. Just then, a soft click cut through the silence. A flickering bulb sputtered to life, casting a weak, sickly glow around the room. In that moment of illumination, he froze. There it was. The walls were marred with stains, shapes twisted in grotesque caricatures. With each flicker of the light, those shapes transformed, revealing dark holes in the walls, sharp, jagged, like gaping mouths hungry for something only they could consume. Mark's skin crawled, and he instinctively touched his own back, feeling the tug of the wounds forming beneath his shirt, a repulsive echo of the darkness around him. The pulse was fierce now, quickening with each heartbeat, sinking with the atmosphere heavy with dread. He shuddered and backed away, breath hitching as the realization settled in those holes weren't just reminders of a past horror, they were harbingers. A low whisper emerged from the periphery of shadows, barely discernible but sharp enough to prickle at his consciousness. "Yours," it said. "Come closer." "No." He shouted back, the sound echoing off the walls, bitter and desperate. The voice swirled in the air, stretching into something sinister and familiar. Something he had heard before. Confusion twisted his gut. He couldn't believe it was the voice of the doctor. The same man whispered in the nightmares that haunted him since their arrival in Maplewood. He felt the batteries of his courage draining, pulling him into the depths of despair. Mark swallowed hard and moved deeper into the basement, attraction almost magnetic now. Each hole seemed to pulsate, alive, begging him to step closer. He felt a feverish need to know what they held inside, maybe answers, maybe salvation, or the darkness that promised to swallow everything whole. Suddenly, a loud thud interrupted his thoughts. The basement door slammed against the wall, sending echoes reverberating through the confined space. Sarah's frantic voice slipped through the crack, still shielded from his view, mixed with the faint cries of their children. The chaos in the nursery pulled at his heart, a reminder of what he fought to protect. "Mark. They're waking up. I can't hold them." Panic seeped into her words, urgency sinking deeper into his bones. The temptation of knowledge warred with his instincts, a perilous battle he couldn't afford to lose. In a decisive push, Mark gritted his teeth, tearing himself from the pull of the strange holes. He had to protect his family at all costs. But before he turned, he caught a fleeting glimpse, something shifting within a hole, a darkness writhing as if beckoning him to stay. "Mark." Sarah's voice cracked again, desperation rushing through. "Coming." He shouted as he barreled toward the door. But as he reached for the handle, it twisted, refusing his grip. The power returned, flooding the space with stark illumination, and for a brief moment, he saw the figure of a child, a small dark silhouette flickering in the shadows, staring back at him with hollow, unblinking eyes. "Don't leave," it whispered, voice sweet yet sinister. Mark's breath hitched, terror gripping him anew. "Who are you?" he demanded, fear threatening to choke him. Laughter echoed from the abyss within the basement, chilling his spine. The air shifted, heavier now, as a chilling realization sank in. Whatever was buried down here wasn't just drawing him in, it was already part of him. And as the walls throbbed with darkness, he could only wonder if he would ever be free again, or if the true nightmare was yet to come. The basement seemed to compact around Mark, tightening like a noose. The child's silhouette lingered in the corner of his vision, unyielding and persistent. He could feel the weight of its gaze, heavy as stone, pressing on his mind. Each flicker of light exposed marks on the walls, a tapestry of despair woven by something unseen. "Mark." Sarah's voice broke through once more, a fragile thread in the suffocating gloom. "Please." "I can't." The handle twisted again beneath his frantic grip, further maddening him. "Sarah." He shouted, desperation pouring out with every syllable. "I'm trying." Then, the whisper returned, creeping in like a snake. "Yours," it purred, slithering through his thoughts. "Come closer." Mark's heart raced, the rhythmic pounding drowning out Sarah's calls. He felt himself drifting, the holes in the walls becoming a siren's song. Something was waiting. Something that knew him. Not just the essence of him, but the marrow. Sweat trickled down his back, pooling in the tender wounds forming beneath his shirt. He had to focus. He had to break free. "I'm coming back, I promise." He forced out, but even to himself, the promise fell flat, lacking conviction. Each movement he made felt laborious, as if the shadows conspired to hold him still. Suddenly, the light flickered wildly, casting strange shadows that danced around the room like specters. Mark turned, compelled by sheer instinct, and watched as tendrils spiraled from one of the holes, reaching out. They twisted and coiled, eager to wrap around him. A single strand brushed against his ankle, shocking him into motion. He kicked it away. "Get off. Don't leave," came the child's weeping plea. "Stay back." He stumbled away from the grasping darkness, heart racing as it howled in frustration. Wouldn't he ever escape this cursed place? As he backed towards the door, he caught sight of something beneath him, a rectangular shadow on the floor, a trapdoor he had almost missed. His breath quickened in fear and intrigue, a small glimmer of hope buried under dread. Was this an escape route or a deeper descent into hell? "Mark." Sarah's words came sharper now. "The kids. They're crying. Please, I need you back." Her voice cracked, and every inflection hit him like a stinging slap. The sight of her eyes filled with terror flared the fire in his chest. He tore his gaze from the shadowy trapdoor. Family. Love. In one swift motion, he reached for the knob again, praying for the strength to wrench it free. But just then, a shrill screech echoed from behind him. It was the figure, the child, raw and alive. "You're mine!" it shrieked. Mark jerked around in shock. The room darkened suddenly, and the wheezing laughter of the unseen filled the air, curling around him like smoke. His breath quickened. The shadows oscillated, swirling closer as they closed in. "Make it stop!" he shouted, feeling anger and fear intertwining deep in his gut. As if in response, the basement groaned, walls vibrating, pulsing as if some force had awakened in the darkness. Everything shook: the floor, the air, his resolve. He had to stay afloat. He had to fight it. Then came the penetrating silence. Just as quickly, the flickering light steadied. In that clarity, Mark caught another flicker of movement in the shadows, something monstrous, something far worse than he dared imagine, hovering close behind the trembling child figure. His mind raced. Time was running out. "Mark!" Sarah cried, a final plea, and he felt the ground shift beneath him as the world wobbled. The trapdoor felt like a gaping maw, waiting to consume him if he dared step closer. What if this was the doorway to salvation? Or was it the abyss calling him home? Sweat dripped into his eyes, despair clawed at his throat. He took one last glance at the child, pleading and sinister, then at the door that throbbed with the call of his family. Which path would he choose? As he made his choice, the air constricted, shrill laughter enveloping him like a rolling fog. In that very moment, a sharp pain lanced through his back, and he felt the tug of someone trying to claw its way out. "Mark!" The scream echoed through the darkness, but which Mark would it be by the time he opened the door again? A sharp sting pulsed through Mark's back, sending shockwaves of agony racing through him. It was as if something had come alive beneath his skin, writhing, clawing for freedom. He winced, falling to one knee, gasping for air that felt thick and oppressive, laced with the scent of damp earth and something else, something coppery. "Mark!" Sarah's voice shattered the silence like glass. "Mark, please." He couldn't focus. The pain was overwhelming, he felt like he was going to be torn apart from the inside. The child figure, still lurking, took a step closer, its features sharpened in the dim light. The chubby cheeks twisted into a devilish grin, eyes glinting with something unfathomable. Was it joy? It stretched its arms wide, beckoning him as laughter bubbled up from its throat, a sound that chilled him to the bone. "Come play, Mark. Let us be together forever." "No." The word tore from his throat, primal and raw. He attempted to rise, but something heavy gripped his shoulders, keeping him glued to the ground. Mark twisted his neck, bracing himself against the pressure, only to feel a cascade of dread swell within him. The room pulsated with energy, a heartbeat that resonated in the walls, each thump echoing his rapidly swelling fear. He clawed at the wooden floor, nails scraping against the rough surface, desperate to pull himself away from that sinister embrace. The shadows twisted again, charged with a mirthful malice, and they began to form patterns as if interpreting his fear. He could see faces, wrinkled and watchful, emerging from the dark. Murmurs flickered in and out, whispers taunting him, lost souls trapped in this purgatory of despair. "Join us," the shadows seemed to drone. "No." He clenched his jaw so hard it hurt, forcing the pain to ground him. Then, an idea sparked in his brain. The trapdoor. Perhaps this was his chance, but how could he reach it? Twisting in position, he looked at it out of the corner of his eye. The door's edges shimmered faintly, an unnoticed light flickering like a distant star amid all this chaos. It felt like hope. He propelled himself forward, gritting his teeth through the fierce burn in his back and the creeping claustrophobia the shadows inflicted on him. "Mark." Sarah's voice rose in urgency. "The door. Come on, get to the door." With a final surge, Mark launched himself toward the trapdoor, but as he did, a sharp tug on his back made him falter. Tendrils erupted from the hollow space behind him, coiling around his torso, thick, oily, alive, quaking with power. "Don't leave us. Stay with us," came the chorus of whispers, haunting and melodic, wrapping tightly around his heart. He felt the tendrils pulling, dragging him back, urging him to succumb. Panic surged through him. He fought against them, nails tearing into the floorboards, but their grip fortified by something far darker. "Mark, please." Sarah shouted again, desperation impregnating her tone. Then came a sound, faint but undeniable, the creak of the trapdoor lifting. A rush of air, like the breath of the outside world, flooded over him. In that instant, he grasped the door handle with trembling fingers, the cold metal grounding him just enough to drown out the dark whispers. With all his strength, he yanked it open. It clicked, reverberating like a warning siren. The darkness was relentless, clashing against him as he fought to look back. The child figure loomed larger now, practically swallowing the light, a monster wrapped in innocence, face contorted with rage and yearning. "Come back. You can't leave me." Its voice echoed, twisted and frantic. Then a momentary silence fell, thick as molasses. Mark realized he had to make a choice: stay back and succumb to the horrors dragging him down, or leap into the unknown abyss below. The hesitation felt as heavy as lead, but he couldn't wait. The light from the trapdoor beckoned, shimmering with a promise of safety. He hurled himself forward, thrusting himself into the abyss as the world exploded into darkness around him. In the freefall, screams and laughter mingled, swirling around him like a tempest. And yet, somewhere was that a glimmer of light ahead? As the shadows roared in fury, he felt the ground vanish beneath his feet for the last time and wondered if he'd ever escape this nightmare. What awaited him in that darkness? Would he find his family or be lost forever? The darkness felt like a blanket closing in, suffocating and cold. Mark's body twisted as he fell, spiraling through an endless void, his heart pounding against his ribs like a prisoner trying to break free. Panic knotted in his stomach, the laughter and screams echoing, blending into a cacophony of fear that gripped him tighter than the tendrils had. Suddenly, he hit something solid. It jarred him, jolting his senses. He rolled onto his back, gasping, trying to make sense of where he was. The dim light ahead flickered like a dying flame, drawing him in. He scrambled to it, limbs trembling from adrenaline and dread. As he staggered forward, the air grew colder, and a thick mist curled around his legs, wrapping tighter like snakes eager to pull him under. He fought against it, pushing forward with sheer will. Every instinct screamed at him to run. His pulse thundered in his ears, drowning out every haunting whisper that floated through the gloom. "Sarah!" he called out, his voice breaking. Would she be in this hell with him? Would they ever reunite? The thought churned in his gut as he pushed through the haze. The light brightened ahead, but it flickered erratically, teasing his eyes with its unpredictability. In mere moments, the atmosphere shifted. Something felt wrong. He could sense eyes upon him, millions of unseen watchers absorbing every ounce of his terror. Mark stumbled into the clearing, gasping as he finally emerged from the mist. It took a moment for his eyes to adjust, and when they did, a wave of horror washed over him. He stood in a vast cavern, the walls pulsing with a sickly glow that mirrored the child's laughter still echoing in his mind. Strange symbols were etched into the rock, ancient and sinister, sprawling like vines towards the ceiling. Off to one side, images of torment played out like a silent movie on the cavern walls. People warped in agony, faces twisted with despair. "What is this place?" he whispered, the words barely escaping his throat. Suddenly, a soft rustle caught his attention. He turned, heart racing, as he caught sight of a figure emerging from the shadows. A woman. Her hair tangled and matted, eyes glazed but lighting up with recognition as they met his. "Mark!" she rasped, her voice hoarse and filled with anguish. "You have to leave, it's not safe here." "Who are you?" he struggled to ask, but the question fell flat as she stepped closer, revealing a gash on her arm that pulsed with the same sickly glow as the cavern. I'm trapped," she stammered, looking over her shoulder nervously. "You have to go back, it's too late for me." "Back? I can't. There's nothing but darkness." Desperation dripped from his voice as the shadows began to swirl again, their presence palpable, hungry. A shadow whipped around, twisting between them like a swift dark breeze. The woman staggered back, terrified. "No. It's coming. You have to go now." Mark's heart raced as he turned, scanning for any escape. The light continued to pulse, but now it felt wrong, threatening. He could hear low growls rising from the shadows, taunting him, promising darkness, despair, and eternal confinement. "Mark!" The woman's voice broke through. "You are the only one who can stop it. Please. Find the other door, it's your only hope." He felt panic swelling in him, and without thinking, he took off, the cavern growing colder and more hostile with every step. Shadows clawed at his back, whispers growing louder, more frantic. The image of the woman lingered in his mind, her eyes wide with fear. He rounded a bend, and there was a faint glow spilling from a door at the far end of the cave. It was pulsating wildly, resonating with something deep inside him. Was this the way out? Or something worse? Mark took a breath, determined to reach it. But as he bounded forward, something tugged at him from behind, a powerful force that felt all too familiar, ready to pull him into the depths of despair once more. Would he make it to the door, or would the shadows reclaim him? Then he realized, what if he wasn't the only one in danger? What if Sarah was still somewhere beyond this darkness? The question hung heavily as he moved closer to the door. Could he really escape this nightmare alone? Mark's legs felt like jelly as he staggered toward the door, the pulsing light throwing eerie shadows that danced on the cold cavern walls. He could hear voices now, his name being called from the depths, mingling with the soft sobs that erupted into maniacal laughter. Everything around him felt alive, an entity craving his fear. He sunk deeper into his thoughts, clutching onto every fleeting fragment of hope, but the woman's face haunted his mind. There was urgency in her warning. What if he didn't find Sarah? What if he walked through that door and she was still here, lost forever? The shadows behind him slithered, a dark wisp licking at his heels, begging him to turn back, urging him to give in to despair. With a final burst of strength, he barreled toward the door, reaching out with trembling hands. The surface was ice cold, a shock that reverberated through him as he jerked it open, shoving his body into the blinding light. The world shifted around him. He tumbled into a new space, landing on something hard. Mark groaned and sat up, blinking disoriented. He wasn't in the cavern anymore. Instead, he found himself in an old, musty room, littered with dust and forgotten memories. The air was thick, oppressive, almost suffocating. "Hello." His voice cracked in the forlorn silence, echoing off the walls. Nothing replied, but he felt the weight of a watchful presence creeping in. The walls seemed to close in around him, reminding him of the cave. Suddenly, a gust of wind blasted through an open window, blowing out a candle flickering on a rickety table, plunging him into a yawning darkness. Fear choked him, and he fumbled for another source of light. Panic surged within him as he pulled out his phone, the screen illuminating just enough to pierce the shadows. His breath caught. Scattered across the floor were photographs, all peeling at the edges. He picked one up. It was a photo of a young girl with wide, innocent eyes just like Sarah's. His heart slammed against his ribcage as he flipped through more pictures, each showcasing a life extinguished, a scream frozen in time. But the fear gripped him again, the realization that the girl in the photo seemed to twist and torment him with every moment he gazed at it. They weren't just memories, they were warnings. Searing pain shot through him as he felt something shift in the shadows behind him. He turned sharply, eyes wide, searching for the source. The laughter returned, a chorus of distorted voices mocking him, blending into a horrifying symphony of despair. Mark stumbled back, breath hitching as a shadow slithered closer, tendrils reaching out, wrapping around his ankles, pulling him down. "No. I can't go back. I need to find Sarah." He cried out, but his voice was swallowed by the growing darkness. Then quiet. A calm blanketed the room, and for a brief moment, he thought perhaps it had all vanished. But the stillness was shattered by a raspy whisper directly in his ear. "She's not here. Not anymore, but she could be, if you listen." His heart dropped. What did that mean? Mark, the whisper taunted, a cruel echoing of his thoughts. "If you want her back, you need to pay the price." Each word felt like a blade, slicing through his resolve. What did they want from him? How much was he willing to sacrifice? The shadows tightened their grip, cold and relentless, as visions of Sarah flickering in and out of existence tormented him. As darkness closed in, he realized there was a choice to be made. In this twisted realm of horror, could he surrender something of himself to reclaim what was lost? Or was that exactly what they wanted? With his next breath trembling, Mark felt the weight of every decision surrounding him, ready to take a plunge into the unknown once more. But what would be the cost? The shadows waited, and they were growing hungry. The shadows pulsed, a living sea of darkness surrounding Mark, tightening like a noose. Panic surged through his veins. He felt the weight of his own desperation pushing down, throbbing with every echo of that sinister whisper. "What do you want from me?" he shouted, voice quaking, but the darkness only laughed, a harsh mockery emanating from all sides. Then, in that suffocating gloom, the photographs on the floor began to whisper to a chorus of ghosts, each image flickering with frenetic energy. They seemed to crawl toward him, faces silently pleading for attention, for recognition. "Help us help her," they urged. The pull of their suffering clawed at his heart, a jagged knife twisting deeper with every heartbeat. He stumbled back, nearly falling, but somehow stood his ground. The shadows trembled, as if waiting. He could hear the distant sound of water dripping, each drop falling like a time bomb, counting down to something he was too terrified to face. He cast his light around the room, searching for an exit, a sign, anything to reclaim his grip on reality. Beyond the disappointment of photos, however, his gaze landed on an antique mirror, tarnished and smeared. Its reflection was distorted, making him look like a grotesque figure trapped in a nightmare. Yet in that moment, he caught something else, a flicker of movement behind him, a dark outline undulating with malicious intent. "Sarah," he whispered, heart racing as images of her bubbled to the surface. His little girl, her laughter a sweet sound like wind chimes in summer. "I will save you," he promised, but doubt crept in, gnawing at the edges. Could he afford to trust the whispers that veiled the truth? Perhaps those asking to be freed were not his lost loved ones, but instead were the very chains binding him. The laughter grew louder, a vicious, spinning cackle echoing from the walls, wrapping around him like thick fog. His breaths turned shallow, each inhalation prickling with dread. Mark stepped forward, driven by an instinct that defied reason. He had to confront the reflection, to face the darkness within. It wouldn't he let him go that easily. Swallowing hard, he raised his phone, its dim light reflecting in the glass. The figure in the mirror morphed, it was him but not. A twisted version, eyes hollow, lips curled into a smirk that chilled him to his core. "What will you give?" it taunted. "Your soul. Or perhaps, someone else's." "No." Mark yelled, feeling the shadows ripple as they recoiled. But it was a bluff, they wanted him to fight, to reveal his fear. The darkness hungered, and it wanted to consume everything he held dear. Just then, the sound of a small child's whimper broke through the chaos. He froze. "Daddy help me," it was Sarah's voice, cracking like porcelain. Hope ignited fiercely, pushing aside the encroaching despair. "Where are you?" "I'm coming," he shouted. With frantic energy, he rushed back toward the mirror. The darkness screamed, swirling violently, but he pressed on, driven by love and desperation. The mirror rippled, revealing a doorway on the other side of the glass, shimmering just beyond reach. "Go before it's too late," the reflection urged, its voice uncomfortably similar to his own. The shadows shrieked, lashing out as if to drag him back, but he wouldn't be deterred. Mark reached out, fingertips brushing the cold surface. The world blurred, the image of Sarah flickering like a candle caught in a draft. Time twisted, pulling him closer to both her and the horror. But just as he was ready to plunge through that portal, a crossroad unfurled before him, one of unthinkable choices. He could save Sarah, but at what cost? Faces, familiar yet distorted, emerged from the dark, their eyes wide with terror. "Choose wisely," Mark came the mocking chant, swelling like a tide. His mind raced as he stared into the swirling darkness, eyes locking onto those pleading faces. Was he prepared to pay the ultimate price? And suddenly, amid his desperate thoughts, the laughter erupted again, louder than ever, as the shadows surged towards him, hungry for his decision. Mark's heart pummeled against his chest, drowning out the sinister laughter. Instinct kicked in. He had to choose. But how could he? The faces around him cried out in unison, their mouths moving but nothing intelligible escaping. Desperation clawed at his throat like a trapped animal. It felt like a slap of ice water, grounding him momentarily in the panic. "Sarah!" he shouted again, voice cracking, pushing through the suffocating grip of darkness. "I'm coming." But the words felt hollow, swallowed by the shadows. The reflection in the mirror twisted and turned, his doppelganger smirking back at him, a puppet of malevolent glee. "What will you sacrifice?" it teased. "Your innocence. Your sanity. Or perhaps a life." A creeping chill ran down his spine as he thought about the faces surrounding him, twisted from sorrow into something grotesque. Was it possible that to save Sarah, he'd have to betray those he'd lost? The idea weighed heavy like a stone in his gut. But those eyes, those pleading, familiar eyes, they beckoned him, a siren song drowning out the screams of the damned. "Choose." The mirror demanded, its voice growing more urgent, more desperate. The shadows shivered, moving in unison, reaching for him. The child's sobs were soft but potent, slicing through the chaos. "Help me, Daddy," every moment stretched, a taut line that could snap at any second. He wanted to weep. He wanted to scream. But instead, he took a deep breath, steeling himself against the impending dread. I choose," but the moment broke. The ground beneath him fractured, dark fissures gaping wide as the echo of his voice faded into nothing. Suddenly, the faces turned hostile, eyes flashing with anguish, morphing into teeth-gnashing creatures clawing at his resolve. He staggered back, shock coursing through him like poison. "Don't let them pull you in," shouted a voice from somewhere close, almost familiar. It was drowned out by the cacophony of shrieks and hisses. It was her voice, or a piece of her. He had to push through. He lunged for the mirror once more, the shimmering portal beckoning. His fingers grazed the surface, cold as ice, and in that instant, the darkness roared in fury, wrapping around him like a claustrophobic blanket. Something sharp menaced at his back, hot breath prickling at his skin. "Fool!" said the reflection, eyes two pits of nothingness. "You can't escape. You're already bound." As the shadows surged, Mark felt an icy tendril lash around his wrist, tugging him back, dragging him deeper into the void. "Go! Go now!" The disembodied voice screamed again, desperation merging with a semblance of clarity. Mark's blood ran cold, recognizing it as Sarah's. "You may lose me, Daddy, but you have to try." He hesitated only for a second, conflicting emotions surging like a tide inside him. Was it worth it? The mirror pulsed with light, shimmering like a gateway to another realm or perhaps to a deeper horror. "Mark!" The whisper echoed again, clarity cutting through the chaos. "I'm here, I'm coming." He shouted, and in that heartbeat of resolve, he lunged forward. He twisted away from the suffocating shadows, throwing himself at the mirror as if propelled by sheer will. He plunged through, the world exploding in light and sound. Yet as he entered, the darkness screeched, a cacophony of anguished cries resounding, and he felt a force yank at his soul, as he stepped into the unknown. When the light faded, Mark gasped and stumbled onto a forest path, where the trees towered ominously. Dread washed over him. Shadows still clung to the edges. But where was Sarah? The air crackled with a familiar tension, as if the forest whispered secrets of its own. "Mark?" A small voice called from the depths of the woods, urgent and trembling. "Sarah." Yet the echo of her name vanished into an uneasy silence. The trees loomed higher, shadows swirling around him, whispering promises and threats in equal measure. And somewhere amid the suffocating stillness, he felt them, the eyes watching from inside the darkness, waiting for the right moment to strike. As Mark moved deeper into the encroaching gloom, a chilling realization gripped him. This wasn't just another realm but a twisted reflection of his worst fears. What lay ahead in those foreboding shadows? The forest sighed, almost in response. And he stood at the precipice, heart racing, as a sinister laugh echoed through the branches, chilling him to the bone. What had he truly released? Mark stumbled forward, heart pounding, as shadows twisted and danced at the edges of his vision. The last echoes of the darkness hung in the still air around him, whispering threats that clawed at his sanity. He had escaped one nightmare, but the forest loomed ahead, dark and wild, a new terror waiting to unfold. "Sarah!" He called again, voice shaky, drowning in silence. Were those footsteps hers? The wind seemed to carry her name, a haunting melody echoing through the leaves. Mark pushed forward, each step laden with a sense of foreboding. The trees towered over him, their jagged branches stretching like questioning fingers towards the sky. The air grew dense with an unsettling stillness, palpable and heavy, like the weight of unanswered questions. Where was she? His breath quickened. Panic tightened around him like a vice. He had to find her, there was no other option. "Sarah!" He shouted again, desperation tinging his voice, praying the forest would somehow guide him to her. Suddenly, a flicker of light caught his eye, a glow moments away beneath a cluster of trees, casting an ethereal illumination that felt oddly familiar. Hope ignited in his chest. The light called to him, warm and inviting. As he dashed toward it, the shadows seemed to howl in protest, swirling violently. Dread gnawed at his insides. What if it was another trap? Mark paused for a second, uncertainty creeping in. But a small sound, a whimper, snapped him back into focus. "Mark!" The voice, it was definitely her. He lunged forward, heart racing, and broke through the last cluster of trees. There she was, standing by a flickering light. Relief washed over him like a tidal wave, but it was quickly replaced by a pang of terror. She looked pale, her small face gaunt, framed by loose strands of hair, as if she had been lost for ages. Sarah. He rushed to her, but something halted him. The shadows danced wildly around her, writhing and whispering ominously. Daddy! She cried, her arms stretching out. But the moment he reached for her, a wall of shadow surged between them, snarling. No! He yelled, reaching out. Panic surged through him, raw and primal. Stay back! She shouted in fear, her little voice trembling. It wants me, Mark. What? No, it can't have you. The shadows flickered, swirling around like chaotic serpents, taking on twisted shapes, echoing laughter that stabbed through him like barbed wire. A sudden realization struck him. The darkness was feeding off her fear. He had to break its grip. He couldn't falter. I'm here. He yelled, trying to quell the chaos engulfing them. You're safe, Sarah. Stay close to the light. It flickered weakly, almost struggling against the onslaught of darkness. Mark pushed through the shadows, focused on Sarah. Hold on. Their gazes locked, and he felt the zealous connection of a father's love filtering through the chaos. You are stronger than this. With renewed determination, he moved forward, and as he did, the shadows shrieked, lashing out at him, hot breath washing over his skin. He raised his arms, demanding them to retreat, pouring every ounce of his will into the command. We're leaving this place, he shouted, his voice finally piercing through the cacophony. The shadows recoiled, swirling like smoke as if stung by his fierce declaration. Sarah's eyes lit up, a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. Daddy! She called again, her voice gaining strength. Come to me. The shadows hesitated, drawn back by their growing connection. He felt the warmth radiate from her, an unyielding force against the encroaching panic. With that, he surged forward, fists clenched. The shadows screamed, swirling around him, but the pulsing light emanating from Sarah rallied, growing wider and stronger until it enveloped them both. Together, Sarah! He urged, gripping her hand tightly. The shadows howled, retreating in a chaotic frenzy, unable to withstand the purity of their bond. With one final push, they burst into the light, the shadows convulsing and screaming as they were eradicated into wisps of dark vapor. As they tumbled out of the engulfing shadows, laughter echoed in the air, mocking, haunting. But it faded quickly, replaced by an echo of freedom and light. They found themselves sprawled on a grassy hill under an open sky, the sun shining brightly, as if waking from a terrible dream. Mark turned to Sarah, taking in her tiny features, the soot and terror melting away, revealing the child he had fought so fiercely to protect. You did it, sweetheart. We did it. Tears streamed down his face, a release of everything he had endured. I knew you'd come for me, Daddy, she said with a tired but triumphant smile. In that moment, they shared a gaze steeped in unbreakable trust and love. They had conquered the darkness lurking within their fears, together. The shrieks from the shadows faded into the distance, frantic whispers escaping reality. Mark breathed deep, feeling a heavy weight lift off his chest, the eternal grip of despair finally relinquished. For now, they were free. Let us go home, he said, voice thick with emotion, squeezing her hand. As they walked down the hill, hand in hand, he felt a flicker of hope spark within, a promise that they would never let the darkness claim them again. And as they ventured back into the warmth of the world, the shadows lingered on the edges, waiting for weaknesses to exploit, but Mark knew together, they would fight. Love conquered all. This was not just an ending, but a new beginning. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, they stepped back into life, ready for whatever came next, armed with love and resilience. Now more than ever, it's time for you to take action. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.